Good morning.
Good morning.
This morning we're interviewing Beverley Katz for the Roots to Boots project for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. Thank you so much, Beverley. You've come all the way from Atlanta
Yeah.
for this interview, having lived in Dallas previously, so we're very thankful that you're spending the time with us this morning. The way I like to start these interviews is to ask you to please give me some background about your family, both maternal and paternal, having come from Europe prior to the South African experience. So if you'll start with that, please.
My mother was born in Cape Town, but her mother came from Lithuania, and she was met at the docks at the harbour by her cousin, who fell in love with her, and they got married, and that's why we say we're all a little bit not 100%, because they were cousins, which was quite often in Lithuania it was like that, but in South Africa, and certainly in America, it's a no-no. And my mother was the youngest of 4 children. She died 2 years ago. And my father came, he was also born in South Africa in a place called Carnarvon. His parents were, his father came from Lithuania and his mother came from Belgium. But originally they must have come from North Africa and then Spain, and then from Spain to Belgium. So that's why some of us are a lot darker than others.
Do you think they came into North Africa from the during the time of the Spanish Inquisition?
They must have left Spain during that time and eventually came to Belgium. And then from Belgium to Cape Town. They, funnily enough, lived in Muizenberg in a different street away from Rick's grandparents. My father was the eldest of 4 children. There is only one sibling left, and that's my aunt who lives here in Dallas. And my parents met when my mother was working for accountants, and she went to a wedding and met my father because it was his sister getting married to somebody that my mother worked with. He actually died after about a year of marriage, and then she remarried somebody else. But that's how my parents met, and they got married, and with 3 children. I'm the eldest.
What year did they marry?
In 49. I was born in 50. I have a brother who lives in Houston now, and my sister is still in South Africa.
And what are the names of your siblings?
My brother is Alan. He and Alan Bloomberg, that was my maiden name. And he married Benita Helprin, who went right through school with my sister. My sister is Jill, and she's married to a twin, Hilton Stern. Alan and Bonnie in Houston had 3 children, 2 boys, twin boys, and another son, Stuart. And unfortunately, the one twin died after getting married in Argentina, and he died in Israel 5 weeks after they were married. The other son, Justin, now has 2 children, a boy, Owen, named after my father. I never gave him my parents' names, Oscar and Rhoda. And they now have a little girl, Shayna Ruby, named after an aunt and my mother. My sister in Cape Town has 2 children, Bradley and Jared. Bradley is married to Mika, and they have 2 sons, Alexander and Maddox. And Jared married Nikki in March of this year.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And I think Rick has told you, we have 3 children. Gregory married to Lauren LaBarba here in Dallas. Nicholas is not married, and Samantha's not married. And we don't have any grandchildren yet. We're the eldest, and we're the only ones that don't have children. And then Rick told you he has a brother in Houston and a brother in Winnipeg. and their children.
The La Barba family, is that from the restaurant company?
Yes.
Well,
Claudius. Lauren converted through Sheriff, even though we're Chabad, and so she's now Lauren Beverley Katz.
her parents used to live right down the street here.
Yeah, but they live in Kelowna now, yeah. Carl and Denise.
Anyway, okay, so you grew up in South Africa.
I grew up on the nice side of the mountain. I grew up in Sea Point.
In Sea
right
Point.
by the beach.
Oh, well, tell me about Sea Point, because I haven't really heard about Sea Point.
When I was first born, we lived in an apartment which was really, really near the beach.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, as I think after all three of us were born, my father would come home from work and the dinner would be prepared, and he actually used to bring it to the beach. Those are like my fondest memories of after school having to do our homework, and then we went down to the beach,
Mm-hmm.
and we would have supper on the beach. Even in fact, I think it was my brother's bar mitzvah just before. My brother and I are 22 months apart, and just before his bar mitzvah, we moved into a house at the top of the mountain. And even then, we still used to go to the beach every afternoon after school, and we would have dinner on the beach. We still try and do it so every time we're in South Africa. We still have to have our dinner on the beach.
Now, your husband had said something about the schools being boys separate from girls. So
Yeah.
did you go to an all-girls school?
Yes,
You
yes,
did?
you did. Yeah. My brother actually went to Herzliya,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister went to Weizmann. That was the Jewish school, and then she also went to Ellerslie. I went to an all-girls school.
Was it a public school or
Yes,
it was
they
a
were
public school?
schools. Yeah. Yes.
And what types of after-school activities were you involved in?
I played netball. Do you know what netball is?
Is netball like
We throw the
volleyball?
ball. It's between netball and basketball, I would say. But I danced. I did ballet.
Oh, you did ballet?
Yeah.
Oh.
Can't remember. And then, of course, because I went to a public school, I had to go to Hebrew school
Uh-huh.
3 times a week in the afternoon. I think it was 3 times a week. I can't even remember. Until long after my bat mitzvah. I mean, it was just something we all did.
Were you Zionist as a youth?
Well, we just all went to Habonim. It was just part of what you did. You know, sometimes, it was difficult because we weren't allowed out on a Friday night. For Shabbat, we went to shul. We had because my mother and her sisters and brother, we were all very close. And so we had Shabbat every Friday night, this big, huge family. And we were not allowed to do anything but play chess on a Friday night. And then as we got a bit older and we went to Habonim, we had to get major permission to do something like that. Habonim, I think when we were younger, was on a Sunday, and then there were some activities on a Friday night. I think as we got older.
Did you find the Jewish community in South Africa more Zionist or less Zionist than the community here in the States?
South Africa was very Zionistic. My mother and my mother-in-law were both very big in B'nai Zion. And after I got married and I lived in Cape Town, we all did stuff for B'nai Zion. In fact, we used to make teglach. That was our big Rosh Hashanah market. We used to make teglach, do things like that.
How did you meet your husband?
We met at our friend's engagement party. He was with Johnny at university, and I was with Ida right from school, from when we were little. We were best friends, and we met at an engagement party.
Was it love at first sight?
I guess so. So they say, yeah. Well, I guess because we were engaged within 6 months and married another 7 months later. I think we knew each other just over a year when we actually got married.
Having seen South African weddings and then having seen perhaps weddings here in the States that are not South African, is there any major difference between the weddings in terms of the types of ceremonies or the types of just the weddings in general? Any big differences?
Well, there's a big difference if you are Orthodox or if you Reform or Conservative. We South Africans like to bring our tape of the music from South Africa. In Atlanta, there's a South African choir. And here I think there is something similar as well. At our son's wedding, it was just the music. Yeah.
So once you got married and had children, did you work outside of the home, or were you?
Not in South Africa. Here in America, I did. Yes.
What was the impetus to move from South Africa, from your standpoint?
When Gregory was born in Durban, it was the Soweto riots. And I'd had a few surgeries so that I could have children. And I just said to Rick, there is no way that this child was going to the army. And I said, we're leaving the country. And then it took another 10 years before we actually left, and 2 other children. We moved back from Durban to Cape Town, and then we had another 2 children. And then we only left 10 years off. Gregory was nearly 10 before we came to Dallas.
Was it 10 years by choice or 10 years to...
It was just circumstances. It was job, we couldn't leave. It was just different things. Well, there were good years after the Soweto riots where we lived a wonderful life in South Africa.
Uh-huh.
I think we always had this idea that we would eventually leave, that the kids would not go to school, universities in South Africa.
When you left, were you able to take your assets with you, or did you have to leave things there?
We took our furniture and stuff, but we were allowed to bring very, very little money at that stage. In fact, when we used to travel to America, we hardly ever left money here, because at that stage, Rick was in a position where we were going to get a transfer and move to New York. But that didn't work out, and eventually we came on our own.
So were you transferring money during that period of time?
No, we didn't.
You did
because
not.
we at that stage we didn't need to, because we were going to get a transfer and it wouldn't have mattered to us, business-wise.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So you had to leave money in South Africa?
Yeah, because you were only allowed to bring a certain amount.
Were you ever able to get that money out?
We just used it when we went back to South Africa. It didn't last very long. I mean, there wasn't, we sold our house for so much less eventually than, like a couple of years later we could have got so much more and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. So how did you pick Dallas as a place to live?
Because Rick had met somebody here and said that if he wanted to move, that he should contact her. And, he came and he met her, and he met a couple of people in Dallas. I remained in South Africa with the children, and when he got this job, I sold up and came with the children. It was just before Pesach, and we came on visitors' visas, and then eventually transferred it before we got green cards.
How did you choose the schools for the children?
Well, because we wanted them to go to Jewish day schools. So Solomon Schechter was the school.
And how did you choose your neighborhood? How did you choose where to live?
I guess because that's where the South Africans all lived.
Where was that?
We were just off Hillcrest and Campbell. And I think we were there for 2-3 years until we bought our house just south of Frankfurt and Hillcrest.
Tell me about your experience integrating into the community, both from the standpoint of integrating in with the South Africans and integrating in with the Jewish community in general?
We knew a couple of people that were from Cape Town. Not that we were friendly with them from before, but somehow you kind of blend. You go for, because it's more familiar, and the South Africans do stick together. And then I guess that's how we became most of our. When my son, Gregory the eldest, the first day that he went to school at Solomon Schechter, he met Kerry Mandel, and when he came home, his mom Debbie Schiff called me and said, you know, they met, and can you come over and will you come to play baseball? Mm-hmm. And really that's where I met three American friends. They were Canadian, mm-hmm. and they were living in Dallas, 2 and 1 American, and we are still all friends today. And that was the base of our friendship, mm-hmm. and we're all still friendly today. And I guess I met most of my friends through my kids, both Gregory and Nicholas playing sport. Mm-hmm. Gregory and Nicholas were great swimmers, but I didn't pursue that because when I landed here, they told me I would have to take them to the, can't remember what it was called. I don't know if it was the Y at that stage or somewhere at 4 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I'd never heard of that, so I said no. So I never pursued their swimming. Samantha was young, she was 3 going on 4. I didn't really make friends through her friendships, but I made friends through Gregory and Nicholas. That's how I got into the South African community. Mm-hmm. But I always had these American friends as well. And then I wasn't allowed to work, obviously, but we knew Michael and Maureen Wallace, and I called Michael one day and I said, you better find me a job or something to do before I go totally crazy. And he did. He found me, I was a bookkeeper. Mm-hmm. I did exactly what the guys did, but I never went to university. I had done that in Cape Town, so that's what I decided to do here. And I worked for Toby Stone. She had a business in her home selling clothes, samples, and I was her bookkeeper.
How long did you work for Toby?
Oh, I worked for Toby for years, even when she had the store on Campbell. And in fact, I had her 50th or 60th birthday at my house.
So this is before she went to work for Neiman's?
Oh, yes, this was long before Neiman's, yes. Yeah. Yes.
And at some point you obviously got a green card and you were able to work officially. Yeah.
But, you know, I kind of did odd things. But my kids were at school, I was very involved. I worked wherever I could in the mornings.
Did you do volunteer work of any kind for the school itself?
Yeah, I used to do some stuff. But I wasn't really, I did stuff for the shul,
Which
for the Habadas when they opened. That was
Forest
before
Lane?
they moved. Yeah, it was here on Forest Lane.
Forest
yeah.
Lane, uh-huh.
I didn't really do much community work while I lived here. In South Africa, I was very involved with Ort.
With Ort.
But and Benoit Zaan, but not in Dallas. I have done, in Atlanta I'm involved.
At what point did you move to Atlanta?
15 years ago. I didn't want to move, obviously, but I had to leave my children here. And Rick had moved because of a job. And I didn't work straight away because I was between Atlanta and Dallas all the time. And then I worked for interior decorators in Atlanta. And I kind of had a jewelry line. That's what I do mostly, that I sell jewelry. And I work for the shul, and I do some stuff for wheat, so and I do tahara.
How did you get involved with Tahara? I mean, did you start learning that here? And
Yeah.
when did you learn?
We have very good friends in Atlanta, and he got pancreatic cancer, and after he died, I approached the rabbi at our shul, at the Habad in Atlanta, and we were a young community, and I said there is no tahara, and they told me to call somebody else, another South African who had been who also wanted to do it. And eventually we started a Tahara group. There's a men's section, a women's section, and it's become quite a big thing. And what we do unaffiliates. That's what we did in the beginning, so that we could learn.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very different. Chabad is very different to any other Tahara. It is done differently. And I just know because in South Africa, after my mother-in-law died and my mother, I was present at that tahara, but you are not allowed to do the actual washing. You're only allowed to do the final dressing if you're a daughter or a daughter-in-law. We have different things for wheat, so like I've had to do a flour demonstration for them.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about the Tahara. I'm involved, and I've been involved for over 30 years in doing Taharot.
Yes.
And I never knew there was a difference between the way the Chabad do it and the way the Orthodox do it. So I'd like to know from your perspective, tell me what's the difference between what you saw in South Africa and what's different with the Habad.
In South Africa, it's a much shorter present. It is done on a wooden slatted board,
Yes.
and there is not as much of the prayers in between like we do with the Chabad. Chabad, I mean, they're both very, it's very quiet. Of course, you never pass anything across the body. The Chabad is far more involved. They do a lot of extra. I personally think a lot of unnecessary things, but
Such as?
There is a lot. The process is a much slower, a much more involved. I mean, besides the fact of the buckets and the water and the actual tahara, it's the washing of the body is. It's all done by hand and not with a shower and things like that. Okay. The Chabad is much more slower process. And of course we're having a huge problem with people with their nails, with nail polish, with the gel polish, because it's very difficult to clean the nails.
Well, I know you have to take off the nail polish.
Yes.
But I think it's probably not possible to take the gel off.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah, I don't think you can actually take off the gel.
Well, we've had to try. We take off as much as we can.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very difficult. And the washing, the people, unfortunately, we've had to do some young people.
Yes.
And the colour, the hair. If people dyed their hair, it's a huge problem getting all the colour out.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I
I don't really talk about it too much.
No, it's okay. But
I can tell you what happened. I didn't know. I kept it a secret for ages. But I do go to the once a year. We have somebody come in from, wherever I've forgotten where they have the big meeting.
Yes.
And she actually said it is something you're supposed to talk about, because how else are we going to get the younger generations to do that?
Well, that's absolutely
and
right.
it is such a big problem. But in Atlanta, we are very, very fortunate. There are people my age and the younger group And let me tell you, mostly South Africans.
Really?
The men, the women, yeah. The South Africans are at the fore. Not so much federation, but in Wheatso and Ort and all those, we have a lot of South Africans are very involved. I used to help a bit at the Chaya Mushka school. That's the Habad school, just because I had a friend there that was a teacher. So if there was anything, I used to help them with the art and stuff like that. But mostly I do the flowers or table settings for things that we have. We do quite a bit at the Chabad house. We do Taste of the Holidays before Rosh Hashanah, and we've just had a big thing that was all about Shabbat. We asked the community for people who had candlesticks, especially from the Holocaust, people who managed to bring stuff out of Germany or wherever. And also we had another table that was wine. It was all Kiddush cups, and there were amazing stories that came out of all these little Kiddush cups. And then we had a woman from New York who made dinner, which was fantastic.
Did you take photos of these items?
Yeah, I actually have some photos of it, yes.
Does Atlanta have a historical society like we have here in Dallas?
I don't know, I'm sure they do.
I hope so. I hope somebody
Yes.
takes photos for the legacy.
Yes, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is.
Okay. So, are there any big differences that you see between the Dallas community and the Atlanta community?
I found here in Dallas that a lot more South Africans go to things like federation meetings and things like that than they do in Dallas. A lot more of the South Africans work during the day. Well, they did, not so much now. They're all starting to retire and things like that.
In which city?
In Atlanta.
In Atlanta.
I found that the South Africans went to a lot more things here. But we're very involved in bridge. And a lot of us spend a lot of time at the bridge club now. That's become, as we get older, and people are starting to leave their jobs and things like that. Yeah.
Are there any traditions or foods that you have brought with you from South Africa that you still incorporate into your daily life or your traditional life on an annual basis?
Yes, the kechel and the tagla. I still make Pesach, Rosh Hashanah. Every bris, I make the big challah with the icing, and well, that's an American thing, not a South African thing. Just whenever there's an occasion, like tonight for Shabbat at my son's house, I've made the latkes. I made it all in Atlanta. There's taglach, there's chicken, the usual fish.
Is there anything that you miss about South Africa?
I go back often enough that I can get my South African influence. I love the beach. I'm very fortunate that I can go and spend a lot of time there. My sister has a home in Fancourt, which is in George, the golfing resort. So we go there a lot. I could not live back in South Africa. I love to go there on holiday. It's got the best beaches, the best food. The scenery is just magnificent. But unfortunately, the lifestyle is just not for me anymore. I'm too Americanized after 28 years. When they ask me if there's any place that you can live, with what's going on in America, I would love to go live. Could live very happily in Israel. If I could live on Herzliya, Patur, I would be gone. If my children would come with me, but they're very much here working, so that's not going to happen.
So this is where you are. This is where you'll stay.
And if there's an opportunity for us to come back to Dallas, that would be the answer, to be with our children. But at this stage, I still have to be in Atlanta.
Okay.
and live on an aeroplane and fly here every 6 weeks and 2 months.
Well, Bev, is there anything that I've perhaps forgotten or that you'd like to add about either your life in South Africa, your family?
I think that we were very fortunate. And my children, from what they remember, Gregory, Nicholas and Samantha, that they had those first few years in South Africa. We had a very privileged upbringing. We were very lucky that we had they had both sets of grandparents, that they had the freedom, the home that we had there, the going to the beach, the close community. Here, they never had uncles and aunts, in the same city, that we would always have to go to Houston or go back to South Africa to be with their family. They can remember all that. And they also still love to go back. The beauty of Cape Town is it's breathtaking. And they do miss that. Even though they've lived here, they really only know growing up in America. But, they also went back often enough that they remember.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today. And
Thank
really,
you.
thank you for taking your time during this Thanksgiving weekend to be with us.
Oh, it was our pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend and the rest of your visit to
Thank
Dallas.
you.
And we hope to see you often.
Sure, and you have to say Gobel Tov. It's called Gobel Tov.
Gobble Tov.
Yes, this holiday is called Gobel Tov.
Oh, Gobble Tov.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Because this once in eternity of Hanukkah and Thanksgiving be
absolutely,
together.
Gobble Tov.
Yes.
Got it.
Instead of Shabbat Shalom tonight, you're going to say
Gobble
Gobel
Tov.
Tov.
All right.
Yes.
Well, Gobble Tov, Beverly. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.